For years, people have asked the question, what is reality and what is the mind? The most common position today is materialism, which is the idea that nothing other than matter exists. Another popular position, inspired by religion, is substance dualism, which is that both mind and matter exist. I hope to challenge both these positions today and show that idealism, the idea that only the mind exists, is the worldview which best explains the evidence. Our first argument goes like this. A possible world where idealism is true is conceivable. There is nothing logically wrong with the idea that this world may simply be a dream or a simulation. So in this possible world, the mind would be the only fundamental substance and matter wouldn't exist. Therefore, due to the identity of indiscernibles, matter and mind cannot be the same substance, because if they were, they would have to share all of their properties, and since mind can't exist in a world without matter, mind therefore has a property which matter does not have. Mary the color scientist is a thought experiment which also proves the same conclusion. It goes like this. Mary is a color scientist who possesses all the knowledge about the color red. She understands the wavelength of red, and how our eyes transfer that knowledge to the occipital lobes of our brain perfectly. However, she's been locked in a black and white room since birth. After learning all this knowledge, she soon leaves the room and finally experiences the color red herself. Mary had all the physical information about color available to her at the time, yet she still did not have the knowledge of red. This means that the knowledge of the sensation of red cannot be reduced to simply physical processes and properties, which entails that it must reduce to the mental. Therefore, the mind is immaterial. Now let's examine the materialist position. They claim that the mind is completely material, which entails that consciousness can be reduced to a material process, which would be something like computer code. They believe that the brain is simply a very complicated piece of hardware in a sense, and that it runs functions based on certain events that occur. So for instance, they believe everything can be explained through some sort of physical event. You feel hungry because your blood sugar level is low, be a good example. However, that mindset is extremely hard to apply to consciousness. The Chinese room is a thought experiment designed to show why consciousness cannot be reduced to simply a process. Here's how it goes. A man sits in a room, and someone from outside writes Chinese onto a piece of paper. The man, using a giant book filled with ways to reply to any set of Chinese characters that entered that room, writes down a reply on a piece of paper and sends it back outside. The woman on the outside is impressed by the response, and when questioned, claims that the man must be a fluent Chinese speaker. However, the man lacks any understanding of the language itself. The picture below sums up the materialist position on the mind quite simply. The mind takes an input from the environment, processes it through some biological computations, and then gives some form of an output. However, there's a big problem with this, because this argument shows that a semantic process is completely different from a semantic understanding of something. The materialist has to hold to the belief that our minds are simply reading this Chinese book when we communicate to people. This thought experiment shows that this cannot be true because our minds actually have an understanding of the language. Therefore, the mind cannot be explained through some purely material process. Now, understanding the mind cannot be a material process, we can form an argument for idealism. We can imagine something which behaves exactly as a conscious human would, but isn't conscious. Therefore, consciousness is something additional to a material body, which entails that consciousness cannot be material. Showing that materialism is now philosophically out of the picture, we have to show why substance dualism is incoherent. The dualist has to agree that mental entities and physical entities can exist completely separate from each other. Yet everything scientific that we understand suggests that in order for a physical change to occur, the entity which causes those changes must possess a spatial location and the ability to transfer energy. So for instance, in a car engine, the car moves itself by. Spark plugs in the engine must be ignited by a high voltage pulse. The ignition of the spark plugs must release energy from the gasoline by combustion. The energy of the gasoline then drives the pistons, and then they drive the crankshaft, and then they drive the axle, which then turns the wheels. Each stage in this process involves energy transference from one spatial location to another. So, if minds lack both spatial position and the ability to transfer energy, then they cannot causally affect our bodies, and therefore, substance dualism is false. Therefore, the mind is immaterial, idealism is true. The mental is all we truly experience. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy, please subscribe, as we'll be making plenty of new content every week. If you have any questions, requests for future videos, or refutions to my arguments for me to consider, please comment.